Welcome, dear chosen one. Settle your spirit, draw a deep, steady breath, and allow this truth to settle within the quiet spaces of your soul. We are standing upon the precipice of a great, unfolding moment, a time foretold not in the rushed headlines of the day, but in the ancient, unmoving wisdom that guides this universe. There is a mandate upon your life, a sacred task so profound that it requires a stability few truly possess. The world around you, beloved one, is beginning to fracture, not in a sudden catastrophic blast, but in a gradual, unsettling erosion of the collective mind. You may already feel it, the rising tide of anxiety, the frantic search for external anchors, the deafening noise of opinions and fears that threaten to pull every untrained soul into a whirlpool of delusion. This is the great turning. And the warning whispered into the heart of the true seeker is this: all of you are going to go mad at once. Pause with that phrase for a moment. Do not let the intensity of the words rush you. This is not a judgment, but a prophecy of atmosphere. It speaks to the contagious nature of fear, the viral spread of panic, and the complete spiritual unmooring of humanity when the ground beneath them shifts. Madness, in this sacred context, is not just a clinical condition. It is the total loss of internal control, the surrender of your sovereign mind to the collective hysteria. It is the inability to distinguish the voice of God from the chaos of the crowd. Imagine a vast ocean storm. The waves are mountainous, the wind is a screaming entity, and the world has become a terrifying, blinding expanse of white foam and confusion. Most ships, the ordinary, the unprepared, are already spinning, tossed by the currents, their crews succumbing to seasickness and panic. They have lost their compass, their anchor, and their sight. They are, spiritually speaking, going mad. But you, the anointed one, have been designated as the lighthouse. A lighthouse does not fight the storm. It does not panic. It stands in absolute stillness, rooted to the solid bedrock, and simply emits a steady, revolving beam of light. Your mandate is not to stop the storm, but to survive it, remaining a fixed point of sanity for all who look to you. The divine instruction that follows the prophecy is clear, simple, and utterly demanding. You must control yourself. This is the core of your spiritual assignment. Your salvation, your mission, and your anointing are tied to this single, crucial act of self-mastery. The control God demands is not external control over circumstances, but the quiet, relentless, moment-by-moment governance of your own internal landscape, your thoughts, your reactions, and your emotional resonance. To control yourself is to deny the spiritual infection of the age. It is to remain seated and sober while the whole world loses its spiritual footing. This journey of self-control is the very path to the deeper anointing, transforming the chosen one from a seeker into a pillar of light. The path to this unshakable control is practical, deliberate, and rooted in specific daily disciplines. Let us calmly explore the 7 anchors you must secure within your soul. Point 1, the absolute necessity of immediate silence. Imagine the modern human experience as a non-stop, high-stakes variety show, complete with flashing lights, a relentless soundtrack, and 1,000 tiny screens vying for attention. This perpetual performance is the playground of the unchosen mind, a state driven by a relentless, almost frantic hunger for stimulation. It's a mind that fears the void, seeking constant external validation through the consumption of endless news cycles, the drama of social media feeds, or the soothing yet ultimately empty drone of background noise. The ancient Stoics, long before the invention of the smartphone, recognized this internal turbulence, which they called ataraxia, freedom from disturbance. Our contemporary challenge, however, is not just internal. It's an external assault, and the script's first decree for those seeking a more deliberate, meaningful existence, the chosen mind, is the radical act of controlling noise. This isn't about simply turning down the volume. It's about enforcing a daily period of absolute silence, an uncompromising internal and external quarantine. This silence, far from being a passive void, is a potent spiritual vacuum, a deliberate creation of mental sankhya, pure consciousness, where the static of the world is intentionally filtered out. Factually, this practice has profound neurological benefits. Studies on default mode network, DMN activity in the brain, the network responsible for self-referential thought and mind wandering, show that regular, deep meditation, which absolute silence facilitates, can help decrease DMN hyperactivity, essentially quieting the internal monologue that fuels worry and anxiety. The DMN, often described as the brain's autopilot, is responsible for up to 47% of our waking thoughts, many of which are useless rumination or planning. By actively denying the DMN its constant input, you are performing a mental factory reset, shifting from a state of reactive listening, waiting for the next cue from the world, to one of receptive hearing, allowing intuition, or, as the text beautifully puts it, the voice of God to enter. The voice of true quiet wisdom does not shout. It is a still, small voice, as described in the Book of Kings, and it requires a silent room to be heard over the world's aggressive clamor. Scientifically, this receptive state often corresponds to an increase in alpha and theta brain waves, associated with deep relaxation and meditative insight. The moment you commit to this practice, the unchosen mind will invariably revolt, manifesting as the notorious pull toward madness. This is the visceral urge to grab the phone, click the scandalous headline, or initiate unnecessary conversation, a low-grade panic born from the unfamiliar territory of stillness. Be specific. This isn't just boredom. It is a surge of cortisol and adrenaline, a genuine biological anxiety that equates silence with danger, because, historically, the lack of information, noise, meant vulnerability to predators or missed vital signals in a wild environment. This moment of panic, therefore, is not a failure, but the divine signal itself, a marker that you are on the precipice of true psychological liberation. It is the friction point where the old consuming self meets the new, chosen contemplative self. Instead of succumbing to the impulse to consume endless distraction, a habit that triggers the brain's dopamine reward system, cementing the addiction to noise, the chosen response is a resolute and unapologetic stop. Close your eyes, engage a slow, deep, diaphragmatic breath, activating the parasympathetic nervous system to counteract the fight or flight anxiety response, and insist on your inherent sovereignty. The spirit is not a quiet suggestion, it is a foundational reality. By choosing stillness, you make a declaration. My deliberate focus is inherently louder and more real than the fleeting, panicky noise of my anxiety. This daily, silent victory is not just a personal habit. It is the fundamental, unique building block of a life lived on purpose, chosen moment by chosen moment, effectively tuning out the world's aggressive broadcast to finally hear the signal of your own unique inner frequency. Point 2, mastering the art of non-reaction. Step right up, seekers and skeptics alike. And let's delve into a concept that is far more than just a fleeting piece of wisdom. It's a profound, physics-defying hack for the soul, often dubbed the spiritual pause. Imagine your inner self as a magnificent high-tech energy generator. The world, with its relentless cacophony of minor irritations, major traumas, and incessant stimuli, is constantly broadcasting signals designed to trip your circuit breakers. The spiritual insight is this: spiritual madness, that feeling of being overwhelmed, depleted, or utterly out of control, is not caused by the stimulus itself, but by a pure, instantaneous reactivity that allows the external chaos to hijack your internal control panel. This isn't just about good manners or keeping your cool. It is about the fundamental conservation of your most precious resource, your spiritual energy, often poetically called your anointing or chi. The core mechanism of this theft is speed. When a stimulus hits, say, an insulting email, a near miss on the road, or a frustrating technical glitch, the average human brain bypasses the slower, more rational prefrontal cortex and instantly fires up the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, triggering the primal fight, flight, or freeze response. This is a purely reactive, energy-draining loop. It is literally biomechanical control. Consider the work of Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, who famously observed, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This space is the sacred pause. It's a nanosecond of conscious non-action, where you consciously override the amygdala's knee-jerk reflex and choose to breathe, observe the stimulus, and allow the initial surge of chaotic energy to simply pass through your aura without attaching itself. This pause transforms you from a controlled spirit, a puppet whose strings are pulled by whatever irritant the world presents, into a sovereign spirit. Sovereignty in this context is the immutable right to determine your internal state, regardless of external conditions. The pause is your zone of divine sovereignty, a metaphysical, demilitarized zone where the world's provocations are stripped of their power. The fascinating part is how this protects your anointing. People often think their spiritual power is protected by elaborate defenses or powerful retorts. The truth is far more subtle and elegant. It is protected by non-engagement. Every witty, furious, or defensive reply is a transfer of energy from you to the offensive party or situation. When you choose not to say the cutting thing, not to engage in the pointless argument, or not to let an insult find a comfortable home in your mind, you are, in essence, building an energetic Faraday cage around your consciousness. The practical application is stunningly simple yet profoundly difficult. It requires cultivating radical non-reactivity, a state where offensive energy is treated like an unstable chemical, observed carefully but never touched. When a person or situation attempts to steal your peace, they are broadcasting a specific energetic frequency, often a low, turbulent vibration of anger, fear, or insecurity. Your spiritual goal is to remain utterly acoustically transparent to that frequency. You hear the noise, but you don't amplify it. This deliberate inaction is not passivity. It is active restraint, the most powerful form of self-control. By maintaining the sacred pause, you conserve your spiritual capital, ensuring that your energy is always available for creation, compassion, and true purpose, rather than being squandered on the world's endless, chaotic drama. The non-reactive spirit is scientifically the most efficient and spiritually the most truly free. Point 3, the discipline of factual sobriety. Welcome to the ultimate masterclass in mental mastery, a deep dive into the profound and often overlooked call to be sober-minded. This isn't about abstinence from spirits. It's about the rigorous and necessary anchoring of your own spirit, not in the tempestuous sea of feeling, but in the bedrock of unvarnished truth. Imagine your mind as a ship navigating the open ocean. The emotional storms of our age, fueled by rampant speculation, impulsive reactions, and societal assumptions, amplified through digital echo chambers, are the squalls and rogue waves threatening to capsize you. The sober-minded individual, the chosen one in this unique context, is the captain who refuses to plot a course based on the ship's rocking, the feeling, and insists on consulting the sextant and the stars, the fact. This is where the intellectual challenge meets the spiritual discipline. The foundational training for this spiritual sobriety lies in cultivating a fierce, almost journalistic interrogative habit. What is the unvarnished fact? This question is a powerful cognitive filter designed to separate the ephemeral, high-energy static of emotion from the low-frequency, stable signal of reality. Emotion, derived from the Latin emovere, to move out, is literally a force designed to propel you, to move you away from a static state. It has a crucial role, often as a valuable indicator of internal needs or external injustice, but it is a terrible foundation for decision-making. Fact, however, is rooted in the Latin factum, meaning a thing done, an established reality that exists independent of your perception. Separating what you feel from what you know is indeed the highest and most difficult form of spiritual sobriety, because it requires the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought and executive function, to override the ancient, lightning-fast responses of the amygdala, the brain's emotional center. This neurological act of deliberate self-control is what gives you your true control. Now, consider a crucial, lesser-known, and deeply insidious tactic often employed to derail those called to a higher purpose. The enemy, whether internal or external, frequently uses a feeling that feels like a fact. This is a masterstroke of psychological warfare. It's not just a passing irritation or a momentary doubt. It's a profound sense, a visceral certainty that one is a failure or a fraud, often termed imposter syndrome, or fundamentally unworthy. The feeling presents itself with such emotional density and gravitational pull that the mind miscategorizes it, treating the subjective sensation of despair as if it were an objective, verifiable piece of data. For example, the feeling of fear of loss is treated as if it were the factual confirmation of imminent disaster. This emotional hijack is what creates spiritual and mental paralysis. Your control, your ultimate power, lies precisely in your refusal to build your house on the shifting sands of emotion. This refusal is a daily, sometimes hourly, act of architectural integrity. It's an acknowledgement that feelings are transitory. They obey the law of emotional transience, cresting and falling like waves. But truth is an invariant. When you feel overwhelmed, your anchor must drop into a truth like, my feeling of helplessness is real, but the fact is I have successfully overcome X, Y, and Z challenges, and I have the tools to take the next single step. The truly sober-minded chosen one understands that the only lasting shelter is constructed from the verifiable timber of past experience, the blueprint of a consistent value system, and the mortar of established, objective reality. This conscious, deliberate choice to subordinate high-intensity emotion to high-fidelity fact is not just a spiritual practice. It is the ultimate life hack for maintaining equilibrium and executing your purpose in a world obsessed with sensational feeling. Point 4, daily maintenance of the inner sanctuary. Your existence is a dynamic interplay between an often tumultuous external world and your precious, finite internal landscape. The sentiment that your spirit is your temple and it requires maintenance just as much as a physical building is not a poetic flourish, but a profound directive rooted in cognitive and behavioral psychology. The control you seek, that unwavering sense of groundedness and deliberate action, is not a gift of fate, but an earned dividend of what the ancient wisdom keepers called sadhana, or daily spiritual practice, which we now term the sacred routine. This is where the magic of slow, deliberate repetition transforms from a mundane chore into a powerful architectural blueprint for the mind. At its core, habit formation, or what the social psychologist calls automaticity, is the transfer of behavioral control from the slow, energy-intensive prefrontal cortex, the seat of willpower and conscious decision-making, to the efficient, cue-driven basal ganglia. When you establish a fixed time for meditation every day, you're not simply engaging in a mindful act. You are leveraging this neurological principle. You are programming your brain to perform a high-value task with minimal cognitive load, effectively saving your precious willpower reserve for truly complex challenges, a phenomenon known as ego depletion. The habit itself becomes the path of least resistance. This is why when life inevitably throws a chaotic curveball, a sudden deadline, an unexpected loss, the ingrained routine of that fixed time for stillness acts as an anchor, a non-negotiable mental sanctuary that grounds your nervous system and prevents total emotional freefall. The true strength of this internal sanctuary is not in the grandness of the ritual, but in its intentionality. Consider the moment for conscious gratitude. This simple act is a potent cognitive reframing tool. Gratitude is empirically proven to increase happiness and reduce toxic emotions like envy and resentment. By making it a daily fixture, perhaps listing 3 unique things you are thankful for before your first sip of coffee, you are chemically altering your brain chemistry. You are strengthening neural pathways associated with positive emotion, effectively creating an upward spiral of psychological resilience. Furthermore, the intentional filtering of all inputs is the modern-day ascetic practice. In an age of information overload, where the average person consumes the equivalent of 174 newspapers daily, this filtering is a vital self-preservation mechanism. It's about creating attentional boundaries to protect your internal climate, ensuring the news, social media, and unsolicited opinions do not become pollutants in your spotless sanctuary. Ultimately, the goal is not frantic, unsustainable activity, but consistency. Consistency, often misunderstood as rigidity, is actually the highest form of self-care because it reduces the mental friction of decision-making. When your external life feels like a whirlwind, your internal world, defined by these sacred, deliberate repetitions, offers a profound sense of security and self-efficacy. You're not merely reacting to the storm, you are standing firmly within the structure you have meticulously maintained. This consistency is the silent promise you keep to yourself daily, a testament to the belief that the maintenance of the inner temple is the most powerful and enduring form of self-control. Point 5. Controlling the vision, the power of refusal. To truly grasp the profound wisdom that what you allow yourself to see determines what you allow yourself to become, one must journey into the fascinating intersection of ancient spiritual philosophy and modern cognitive neuroscience. The concept of the chosen one is not merely a fantasy trope from fiction, like the Matrix or Harry Potter, but an ancient archetype found across global mythologies and spiritual traditions, from the Jewish concept of the Messiah to the Buddhist principle of the Dalai Lama. This archetype, when applied to the individual, suggests that within each person lies a unique preordained purpose, a destiny that requires not blind faith, but active, deliberate vision setting. This is where the power of self-control, our inner sovereign, takes center stage. Neuroscience provides a compelling map for this internal battle. Our brains exhibit a remarkable feature known as neuroplasticity, the ability to reorganize neural pathways based on new experiences and, crucially, mental imagery. When you vividly visualize yourself performing a task or achieving a goal, you activate many of the same neural circuits in the motor cortex and basal ganglia as if you were physically doing it. This is why Olympic athletes use mental rehearsal to practice flawless execution. Conversely, when you entertain destructive images, narratives, and imaginations, visions of failure, financial collapse, or social panic, you activate the brain's fear center, the amygdala, and reinforce the neural pathways associated with stress, anxiety, and a primitive fight or flight response. By refusing entry to these negative projections, you're not merely engaging in wishful thinking. You are conducting a powerful form of cognitive reframing that strengthens the more logical, future-oriented prefrontal cortex, your brain's center for executive function and conscious decision-making. This constant mental selection process is the engine of the self-fulfilling prophecy, a concept popularized by sociologist Robert Merton. A self-fulfilling prophecy begins with a belief or expectation that, without being objectively true, influences a person's behavior so powerfully that it ultimately causes the belief to become reality. If you believe you are destined for failure, your brain will subconsciously prime you for anxiety, lead you to subtle acts of self-sabotage, and cause you to interpret ambiguous events as confirmation of your doom. Your internal vision, in essence, becomes the invisible director of your external reality. Your strength as a chosen one, that unique person destined to fulfill your greatest potential, is tested precisely in this moment of internal threat. When the fearful vision arises, the highest act of self-control is to acknowledge it, not repress it and then calmly and deliberately replace it. This act of substitution, trading a vision of chaos for the vision of divine peace and the perfect, preordained outcome, is the ultimate spiritual and psychological power move. It is not about ignoring reality, but about choosing the lens through which you interpret and act upon that reality, leveraging your brain's plasticity to literally wire yourself for the success you are meant to embody. Point 6, the humble acceptance of your limitation. The human spirit, a restless architect by nature, often confuses influence with omnipotence, leading to a profound yet common source of global madness. This widespread anxiety stems from an exhausting, futile attempt to manage the three great uncontrollable forces: the future, the actions and opinions of others, and the sweeping, chaotic global narrative. Factually speaking, the cognitive effort required to process the sheer volume of variables in even a single other person's decision-making process, let alone a geopolitical trend, exceeds the capacity of the human brain. Neuroscientists confirm that our prefrontal cortex is optimized for managing immediate, local, and personal challenges, not for simulating the complex systems of the entire world. To continuously try to control what is fundamentally external is akin to trying to empty the ocean with a teacup, a Sisyphean task that drains our vital life force, leading to burnout, resentment, and a deep-seated feeling of inadequacy. Yet, within this surrender lies a profound, paradoxical strength. The very act of humbly and truthfully accepting your limitations is not a retreat, but a strategic redeployment of power. This concept is beautifully captured by the spiritual idea that your anointing is only meant for the path directly beneath your feet. Imagine an ancient lamp. Its light is not a global floodlight, but a focused beam, perfectly illuminating the single step necessary for safe passage. This beam represents your actual sphere of control, your attitude, your response, your work ethic, your integrity, and the daily disciplines you choose. This is where your true spiritual and psychological anointing, your unique gift and capacity, resides. By obsessively peering into the fog of the future or the minds of others, you neglect the very ground you stand on, causing you to stumble. The most specific and unique power move is therefore to release the need to fix the world, and instead focus your energy only on the small circumference of your own being. This is the purest expression of self-control, transforming the vague, draining desire for universal influence into a potent, achievable mastery of the self. This focused surrender is not apathy. It is the highest form of disciplined engagement. By dedicating your efforts to refining your character, cultivating present moment awareness, and executing your immediate duties with excellence, the only things truly within your grasp, you create a ripple effect. A well-ordered, disciplined, and peaceful individual subtly raises the equilibrium of every environment they enter, whether it's a family, a team, or a community. You cease being a source of chaotic anxiety and become a center of calm stability. The world is not fixed by global coercion, but by the relentless, focused effort of individuals mastering their inner world. By accepting the narrow scope of your direct command, your actual impact on the world through integrity and personal excellence is paradoxically strengthened, creating a life that is both captivatingly meaningful and genuinely influential. Point 7, anchoring to the ancient text. In the dizzying whirlwind of the modern era, where information is a tidal wave and truth seems to change with the daily news cycle, the concept of an unmoving word stands as a magnificent, unshakable anchor. This final and arguably most essential pillar of personal sovereignty isn't about rigid dogma, but rather about deliberately returning to a fixed, eternal reference point, the sacred texts of humanity's deepest spiritual traditions. Consider the analogy of a sailor navigating open water. The boat, representing the self, is tossed by the waves of cultural shifts and fleeting ideologies. Without a celestial navigator, the fixed star that is the sacred text, the journey becomes an aimless drift into delusion. This text, whether it be the Vedas, the Bible, the Quran, the Dhammapada, or others, offers a cosmic roadmap, compiled over millennia by individuals who wrestled with the perennial questions of existence, morality, and the divine. Their wisdom is time-tested, providing not just answers, but the very framework for asking the right questions. The secret to unlocking the transformative power of the unmoving word lies not in academic study, the dissecting of syntax and historical context, but in meditative absorption. To read the sacred text in this way is to practice a form of spiritual biofeedback. Instead of approaching the text as a critique or a historical document, the reader engages in lectio divina, or divine reading, a practice originating in the Benedictine tradition, or similar methods of deep reflection found across all major faiths. This involves a slow, deliberate reading, lectio, followed by meditation on the text, meditatio, prayerful response, oratio, and finally, resting in the presence of the divine, contemplatio. This rhythmic, intentional engagement bypasses the critical, analytical mind and speaks directly to the subconscious and the nervous system. The cadence and certainty of ancient promises, such as the reassurance of ultimate justice, the imperative of love, or the certainty of inner peace, act as a psychological and spiritual reset button. When the world outside screams anxiety and scarcity, the quiet, repetitive reading of foundational truths counters that noise with a stable frequency of abundance and order. This constant connection ensures an unwavering tether to the reality of the divine. Human societies are prone to cyclical waves of delusion, collective illusions about power, wealth, or morality that distract from ultimate reality. History is littered with examples of civilizations that lost their spiritual compass and collapsed under the weight of their own fleeting obsessions. By tethering oneself to texts that emphasize humility, service, and the impermanence of material things, the individual develops a powerful spiritual immunity. For instance, the Stoic teaching on the dichotomy of control, the Buddhist concept of anicca, impermanence, and the Christian emphasis on storing treasures in heaven, all perform the same function. They recalibrate the soul's compass away from what is transient and toward what is eternal. The specificity of this connection is unique to each person. The goal isn't uniformity of belief, but uniformity of anchorage. When you internalize the logos, the divine reason or underlying structure of the cosmos expressed in the text, you cease to be merely a product of your environment. You become an expression of an older, grander, and more permanent truth, making you a pillar of stability in a rapidly dissolving landscape. Beloved chosen one, the prophecy stands firm, and though the world around you may feel increasingly chaotic, your path is not defined by the noise of the crowd, but by the mastery of your inner world. Throughout history, great spiritual figures, from the desert fathers to early mystics, from the prophets of old to modern contemplatives, have all emphasized the same truth. Self-control is the first and greatest battlefield. Not because the world is harmless, but because true power begins with the ability to govern one's own mind and emotions. This journey you're on is not a race, nor is it a competition of volume, force, or dominance. It is the quiet, daily devotion to stillness, sobriety, and conscious awareness. These practices are not abstract spiritual ideals. They are scientifically validated ways of strengthening the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, and clarity. When the pressures of society pull you toward reaction, remember the lighthouse. A lighthouse doesn't run, shout, or panic. It stands grounded on solid rock, shining consistently, unmoved by the storm. In psychology, this mirrors what is known as emotional stability, the ability to maintain internal calm even when external conditions shift violently. Your peace, therefore, is not passive. It is a form of leadership. People naturally gravitate towards steady souls in unstable times. When you insist on your inner stillness, you become a psychological and spiritual anchor for those who cannot yet hold themselves together. This is why your control matters. It is not selfish, it is service. The chaos you see around you is not random. It is a test of spiritual maturity, discernment, and resilience. The world needs examples of calm strength now more than ever. So let your steps be slow and deliberate. Let your spirit remain sober, alert, and deeply aware. And let your inner discipline be the silent yet powerful testimony of your divine calling. For in mastering yourself, you become a light bright enough to guide others back to the shore.